Welcome back to the 10-minute episodes. I'm your host, Aman Carney, and today I'm going to be talking about pretty much sports news across all sports because we got F1 starting up this Saturday, the first race, and then obviously we got some news in NFL, which I'm actually going to start off with this episode. But if you aren't familiar with the podcast or would like more sports content, make sure to look in the link in the description below because obviously if you like longer form episodes you can find us on Spotify and Apple. They're longer, way longer episodes covering all content, and then obviously here on YouTube and TikTok where you get the shorts of sports content daily. That way we really do cover all the sports that happened in the past week. And so we'll start off with the NFL. Obviously, the previous episode I uploaded was how we should gear up for a huge NFL offseason. I still believe that, and one of the dominoes was Tee Higgins. And Bengals obviously had a shaky year. Joe Burrow was unhealthy to start, determined he was healthy, and then hurt his hand, and then ended the season. And I feel like it's fair to say, had he been healthy, the Bengals, Jamar Chase wouldn't have had sort of a down year, even though he did make it to the Pro Bowl. And by the way, the Pro Bowl, I just feel like shouldn't be like that important to a player's contract, because even though a lot of people like to watch it, it's like it's just lost its charm in my opinion. Like the other events other than the actual game has been more entertaining in my opinion. And even though it's fun to watch to see these players just go at it in a flag football format, it's just not the same. Like I get it's like the case with the NBA All-Star game. I get people don't want to be injured and whatnot, but at a certain point, especially in the NFL, it's just not as much of an accomplishment if you make it to the Pro Bowl. Because guys who didn't make it to the Pro Bowl became all pro players, and some of the guys in the Pro Bowl didn't become all pro players. Like it's just confusing how things are ranked, things are chosen, and I just feel like Pro Bowl isn't that much of an accomplishment anymore. But even though Jamar Chase did make the Pro Bowl, he did have somewhat of a down year because obviously Browning was at quarterback, did decently, and Joe Burrow's injury just put it off because it would have been them, the Bills, the Ravens, and the eventual Super Bowl champions, the Chiefs. And even though the Chiefs did beat the Bengals on their way to the Super Bowl last season, I believe, the Bengals obviously did make it to the Super Bowl the season before, and Joe Burrow is like 3-1 against Mahomes. And even though Mahomes did eventually win a Super Bowl, unlike Burrow, who lost to the LA Rams, I just feel like the Bengals with Burrow during that stretch when they were like 5-3 or something, they were literally unstoppable. I feel like it was literally between them, the Chiefs, the Bills, and then the Ravens. And so, obviously, given a full season, the Bengals are going to do really well. And Tee Higgins being franchise tagged, he is probably bummed out about that because he wants a long-term contract somewhere. But the Bengals recognize his value, didn't want him to walk anywhere, and I agree with the franchise tag. And honestly, I feel like the league has to watch out because the Bengals are becoming sort of a compelling destination with Joe Burrow there, with Jamar Chase there, with Tee Higgins there, with these young players there, and obviously running back Joe Mixon, he is getting older, and a running back's prime is literally only like 5 seasons because all of the contact they have to absorb. And with no team wanting to pay running backs, they're sort of almost being ruled out of the NFL in a way. And it's just sad to see. So we'll see what happens there. Now that the Bengals, Tee Higgins could request a trade at some point, hold out, whatever it is. I don't really know how that works if you can do that after franchise tag, but I feel like that's going to happen. And it does give more time for the Bengals to iron out expenses, sign O-line, because Burrow still remains like one of the most sacked players since he entered the league. And they are taking those steps, but I just feel like Tee Higgins probably wants a long-term contract, may request a trade if things don't go well in Cincinnati. But now, sort of the first time we're talking about multiple sports. But F1, I'm gonna be talking about it after preseason testing because, like I said, first race is Saturday, and it's honestly crazy because we had the F1 preseason testing, and I feel like everyone fully expects Red Bull to stay dominant and just be on top of the table for the entire season. And reports came that Red Bull wasn't even using their full capabilities. And obviously, when people don't know that and their immediate reaction is just, could this be the season where there's parity around the F1 grid where Mercedes has a chance, Ferrari has a chance, McLaren has a chance, like whatever it is. And like we said on Spotify and Apple a couple weeks ago or a week ago or something like that, it's really going to be interesting because you got drivers moving around in 2025. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari. We've touched on that a lot. And under the current, they've won 38 of the last 44 races held under the current regulations, and they remain the team to beat. It's like Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes dominating all those years. And honestly, I feel like if you're not a Red Bull fan and if you're a Mercedes fan, you really can't be mad at their success because it was the same thing with Mercedes where it was a foregone conclusion that Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes for the constructors were going to win, and obviously Lewis Hamilton for the drivers were going to win. So you were pretty much just racing for second at that point. And that's how it was for a while. So I feel like if you're a Mercedes fan, there's no way you could be mad at what Red Bull's doing. And even though Max Verstappen is, some people questioning him, the robbery of Lewis Hamilton, whatever, because he would have obviously gotten, instead of tying the record for the most championships won by a driver, he could have beaten it. People say he got robbed, but right now with Red Bull dominating, there's no way you could be mad at that if you're a Mercedes fan or even another fan, because Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes were doing the same thing. And sure, Red Bull has more capabilities and whatnot, money to go to their car, but it's going to be interesting for sure. Ferrari under new management, they could do well because their one sort of criticism was the fact that their strategy was just awful. They didn't pit when they needed to pit. Their cars were just, there were a lot of DNFs, and it was just crazy to see because Ferrari's literally known for that. And there's a lot of I believe like Aston Martin's going to do well. They took a step up last season. I feel like McLaren's time is now too with Piastri and Lando Norris because they're two young drivers. And I feel like Lando Norris, at some point, he's got to take the next step. And that's not me saying he's a bad driver. It's just it sort of seems stagnant at times where you get a good result here and then come back down to earth the next race. And so I feel like for Bahrain, it's almost every race is Red Bull's to lose, and we'll see how the first couple races go because I'm not going to overreact to one result because if Red Bull gets 5th and 7th or something like that in Bahrain, I'm not going to overreact and say it could be signs to come during the season. And so I'll only make a judgment based on what I see for the first few seasons. But if you enjoy us talking about F1 here on this channel, make sure to tune in to Spotify and Apple because as the races are on the weekend, you could be getting special F1 episodes exclusively on Spotify and Apple with special guests potentially, and obviously more F1 content is going to be posted on YouTube during the season and as news comes out. Obviously, all social media platforms, YouTube, everything in the link in the description below. So everything's linked there, all our social media accounts, podcast accounts, and everything like that. So make sure to like and subscribe, obviously, if you enjoyed today's episode. And see you later in the week.